Hey, welcome to the Co-Away podcast. This is a brand new thing for the Construction Owners Association of America, but we're excited about talking to a variety of folks in the industry on things that relate to this thing called the Co-Away, which, if you're interested, you can find more about on our website. The very short description of what the Co-Away is: the idea that a team of people led by a good owner, which we'll talk to our guests about, sharing best practices in a culture built on trust and respect, will complete better projects. It basically has to do with the idea that people matter in an industry that's sometimes hyper focused on technology and efficiency and those sorts of things. I'm Howie Ferguson. I'm the executive director of COA, the Construction Owners Association of America. And I've been in this role after years of being an owner for about 4.5 years, and delighted to have as our first guest a friend and a member of COA, Kirsten Neff with GSA. Kirsten, why don't you just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Howie. I am Kirsten Neff. I am the Program Management Officer, the PMO, for the U.S. General Services Administration's Southeast Sunbelt Region 4. I'm located in Atlanta, Georgia, and our region covers 8 states in the Southeast United States. And while we do design and construction services for federal buildings and courthouses, my team focuses on the overall project management process and supporting project managers and their project team members across all of our project programs. So everything from very small renovations to more complex renovations that require design effort as well, to construction of brand new federal buildings and courthouses. My background is I have spent 20 years in the Navy and the United States Navy Civil Engineer Corps, working a lot of times with the Seabees, and I had a stint in private industry as commercial property manager before coming to GSA and doing design and construction here.
Awesome, and hoorah on the Navy piece. We share that in common. So just to kick things off, Kirsten, and just for our audience, this is unrehearsed. These are kind of coming out of hopefully not left field, but it's not like we sent these discussion points to Kirsten in advance. So what you're going to hear is coming from Kirsten's heart. What is, Kirsten, if there is one thing, maybe it's two or three, but what's your biggest day job concern these days? And second part, what are you or your organization sort of doing about that biggest concern?
Mm-hmm. So my team supporting design and construction project teams, my biggest concern right now is assisting with process. So making sure that while we have many different project teams out there, and GSA as a culture is great at giving our project teams a lot of autonomy, but it also means we lack a lot of standardization. And that makes the organization a little less efficient. It also makes it more difficult for individual client agencies when they're working with us, because their experience might vary from project team to project team, and certainly between working with us in Region 4 versus other regions across the country. And within project teams, if your project teams are having to reevaluate things like roles and responsibilities for every new project that comes along, it just adds time. It's challenging, and might also not meet everybody's sweet spot. So we're worried about process in terms of right now we're focused on initial project intake, we call it, getting the right team assigned right as a project is kicking off. And then also we call it the global project management lifecycle. We have my counterpart over in Region 5 that's located out of Chicago that covers the Midwest, has some great training that they have been giving to their teams for years, and so we're adapting that in Region 4. So that's what goes on in my world on a daily basis. And your other part of your question was about kind of our bigger program stuff, right?
Well, it was, you kind of already answered it. It was about what's your biggest concern and what are you doing about, how are you scratching that itch?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you kind of answered it. But I love part of, like, early in your answer, Kirsten, you mentioned the word culture, and in my brief description of the co-away, that's a part of it. Talk about that a little bit, the culture, and not so much what it is. You're interested in that too, but why it matters. People hear that term like some others and they think, well, who cares, man? It's all just about cost and budget and schedule. But I would submit, and the co-away kind of edict or mindset is that culture does matter. Talk about that from your chair.
Yeah, lots of pieces to culture in our organization. So, from a COA perspective, we agree that as the owner organization, we set the culture for our interagency or interdisciplinary project teams. When we hire the A&E, we hire the general contractor. The owner by default has the lead. We hold all the budget. We're the ones paying the bills. We're the ones who awarded the contract, set the standards. Uh, and sometimes the people in our organization don't have that as front of mind, that that's an important part of their role. They're answering to so many folks internally, both within GSA and, say, for example, other federal client agency representatives, that they don't always see themselves in that leadership role in their owner, contractor, designer project team. Uh, and that although some people listening to this might think exactly the opposite, right? That we sometimes come across as a 900-pound gorilla, partly in part because of the all the hoops that our representatives have to go through in order to be able to get whatever they get out. But so Howie, I'll just put in a shameless plug for COA, that we love the COA training specifically because it marries both of those things that we just talked about. So it's heads down process focused, or sometimes focus on the actual tools of managing projects, and it's delivered in a way that always highlights the 3-part team and is always telling the owners the message that you have to exert leadership here. You rely on the resources and delivery of your general contractor and designer, but that you're ultimately in charge as the owner, project manager, or project team, and it's important to do the kinds of things that make everybody successful. So rather than going to any specific examples, I'll just kind of stop there.
No, it's all good stuff. And here's a follow up that I think follows up. That's what a follow up is. Um, to me, culture now with my current job with COA, but back when I was an owner, um, running projects or doing other stuff, culture may not matter when times are good. I think it does matter more when things go wrong, and they usually do in some way on projects. They're complex, a lot of moving parts, a lot of people. Um, so, with that kind of background, Kirsten, and thinking about culture for you personally, for your Region 4, and maybe for all of GSA, um, talk about how you handle uh, tension, conflict, bad times, whatever you want to, things that stuff happens, the bumper sticker, right? How do you go about handling that? Just think about it from a younger person's perspective, and they're thinking, I want to be Kirsten Neff one day. Well, maybe this is a little bit of sage advice, right? So, how do you handle tension or conflict?
Very cool. Thank you. So I think about a couple of examples. Um, so in our organization, most of the tension or problems are when something goes wrong on a project that usually requires some kind of uh, problem to be solved, a scope to be written, and then funding to be provided for that. And then you're under the gun of time, through that whole process. And when I was managing a team of project managers, when you're in the initial stages of that, well, the first analysis that had to be conducted is this a real problem or is this a perceived problem? Those are two
Mm.
different kinds of problems. They're both important, but they require vastly different solutions. Quite frankly, perceived problems are much harder to solve. But let's focus on just an actual say change condition that was unforeseen at some level, and having to then focus on finding a solution as opposed to pointing the finger. So as I said, presumably unforeseen. There's people at high levels at GSA who think that if you do really enough study and investigation, if you really do your homework, then you should never have an unforeseen condition again. Okay, try changing out the whatever system in a 100-year-old federal building. Yeah, great. But if the initial effort is focused on problem solution and to resolution, then that's the best way to support project teams. And then the lessons learned can always come out later. And
Mm,
that's so as opposed to pointing the fingers, you frame it as a lessons learned opportunity. And then another thing on culture that GSA is doing is um, thanks to some extra training money that was available at the end of the fiscal year, we are rolling out leadership training in a couple different formats to every supervisor in Region 4. And uh, for some experienced folks, I'll offer like me, and I've talked with some of the other folks in the classes. It's maybe not a lot of new content, but it's always good um, refresher, and it's always good to chew on these kinds of leadership questions with your other counterparts, in an environment separate from that emergency that someone needs to solve. And I like to think that supporting supervisors in that way is the best way to support the associates. That if leaders are getting that opportunity to pause and reflect and really kind of assess priorities in the day-to-day stuff or in the responding to emergencies, then they're best equipped to be able to support the associates that are managing the projects, running the estimates, doing the scopes, that kind of stuff. And and that is a critical component. I won't say it's the key, but it's a critical component to creating a good culture where you're focused on the project, what the project needs, what the project team needs to deliver that, and less about the kind of individual silos and stuff like that.
yeah, I love that because to me it sends a message from headquarters from on high to you leaders, um, that stuff matters. Yes, of course we have to please our clients and get projects done on schedule and budget, all of those measurables, but um, the other things matter too. And to me, it relates to another question I had for you, as someone who's been around the block a little bit in a good way, and it has to do with attracting and retaining, which may be harder than getting them in the first place. Talent, your own in-house folks. Um, Talk about that. Your own Kirsten's philosophy when it comes to attracting and retaining talent, maybe with an emphasis on retaining. What do you and what does GSA do to keep the best folks encouraged and supported and motivated?
Yeah, I would offer for my experience at GSA, this is a new phenomenon for me. When I first got to GSA, there were already a lot of old timers in the team, and they stayed around for quite a while, even after I arrived. And it wasn't until recently, I don't know, I'll say maybe in the last 8 or more years or so, that
Hmm.
we actually really had to deal with turnover. We had a really stable team for a long time, and then things started happening. Well, most of those teams left through retirement, and as we were replacing those people, we got some great new talent, great blood coming in with great experience, but we find that our current workforce is more mobile than they had been in the past. And some of it is related to this, it's easier to move around because a lot more positions are virtual and that kind of stuff. Some of it is, I just feel like there is more mobility across the design and construction space between federal agencies. For example, we are hiring folks from other federal agencies, which we hadn't done before. We were either raising them up, as brand new graduates through our intern program, or we were hiring um, people out of industry. But now that we find people coming in more from other federal agencies, they're also more willing to go to new opportunities at other federal agencies, and then still some interchange with industry. One advantage we have on the retention side, being federal as opposed to our industry partners, is things like stability and benefits and
Right.
plans for retirement and all that kind of stuff. Um, and the big one is the fact that we very rarely lay off. Right, when we go through downturns, we still have work to do. When I was managing my project team during the Great Recession, um, our federal budget went down. It usually lags what's going on in industry by about 12 to 18 months. both the going down part and, quite frankly, the coming back up part.
Right.
And so my team used that time to do a lot of the stuff that's urgent but not important, or sorry, urgent, sorry, important but not
Important but
urgent.
not urgent. Yeah.
So that the things we don't normally get a chance to get to, some process improvement stuff, some team dynamic stuff, uh, um, yeah, some internal initiatives that when we're running projects we just don't have time to handle. We did a great job with getting more invested in our project management information system at the time, and that kind of stuff. So that's one advantage we have in terms of retention, is we keep people around and there's plenty of stuff to do, even if the project budget isn't there. But I don't have a good like silver bullet in terms of the mobility piece. I think GSA is a pretty attractive place to be. We give our, as I've shared already, we give our project teams a lot of autonomy, which I think if you're in the design construction space, and the fact that this is our mission, I think how we have told you that before, that as much as I love doing facilities in the Navy, it was always a side business to the main business of ships and planes and all that kind of stuff, right? So at GSA, buildings is what we do, and I personally love being part of that culture. So that's probably one of the biggest retention things we have for those kind of geeks.
That's fabulous. That's a great, that last piece. Yeah, I can totally relate to. You're not supporting the core mission. You are the core mission, which is that's nice. That absolutely. Okay. Wrapping it up, Kirsten, one more for you. And this is another sort of reflective, think of younger folks who might be watching or listening, learning from someone who clearly has been successful any way you measure it. Um, what is a piece of advice that you would give your younger self if you could go back in a time machine and talk to fill in the blank year old Kirsten? Oh, I wish I'd have known this back then. What would that be?
Oh, that's a great question. And um, what's coming to mind right now is kind of related to balance. That you're so, when you're junior in your career, it is your job to not only do whatever job you're doing, but learn the business, learn your career, grow yourself, and that's all really good and important. And understand that at some point you will hit, I won't call it diminishing returns, but you'll hit a point in your career where um, you are performing as much as you are learning, and then you'll probably, that inflection point will probably um, turn the other direction, right, where you're the one teaching now, right, as opposed to learning. So as you're young in your career, junior in your career, um, take in as much as you can, learn as much as you can, um, do the thing you're doing so that you're becoming proficient with it, but with an eye on the fact that you won't always be in learning mode. So be preparing your life for having the room for life outside of work, I guess, is basically what I'm offering here. So if you're an actual young person, maybe at some point you'll want to partner up and have a family, or maybe you'll want to do something completely different, or maybe you want to do other things in your career, or maybe you'll want to take your, do a completely different career. Understand that give yourself space, that your life will change and grow as you're in the junior part of your career, learning your career as well as doing your job.
That's fabulous. That's good stuff. I wouldn't mind telling my younger self that too in that same time machine. Um, awesome, Kirsten. As we knew it would be a great conversation. Thank you very much, both for your participation in COA in general, and for taking time out to talk to us today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Cool.